The strongest had a chance to delay the wounded comrade from a nearby car, and he slowly was bleeding and breathed heavily. The wounded Mu Feng said Jing Hao that he could die for him and become his friend, is all that he could only dream of his whole life. Then the young man stopped showing signs of life, finally asking the hero to look after his sister. And Jing Hao could not believe his death. The main character's eyes were filled with a thirst for revenge, and he said in his thoughts that he would make them pay for their deeds. The Lord of the Dark World, Jing Hao, recalled all this, sitting on the throne. And the servant asked if his parasites from a bloody prison woke up. The desire to fight left the great killer, and the servant said that subordinates would deal with these parasites. Jing Hao snapped a finger and said that no one would survive in front of him, and the parasites began to dissolve and did not understand how he was here. 4 ninja asked for forgiveness for being disturbed by the master of the master, and he said that these were minions from Lenion. The hero realized that if he does not return there, then people would think that he was already dead, after which it was decided to return to Lenion. The next morning, Jing Hao was on board an airplane heading from Insicus to Tianlan and tried to fall asleep. Fan Bin and Lin Zhuyan walked on board the aircraft, which were discussing the events in a bloody prison. The quick-tempered Fan Bin saw Jing Hao and rudely asked to transfer because he took his favorite place, and Lin Zhuyan began to reassure him. In response to his impudent behavior, the main character only looked at the young man, calling him an idiot, and remained calm. The shocked Fan Bin asked who he was at all, adding that he was a native of the Great House, and Lin Zhuyan tried to reassure him. Nevertheless, the guy sat behind the hero and in his thoughts said that as soon as they sit in Tianlan, he would show him what real pain is. Soon the plane landed, and Fan Bin was unhappy that Jing Hao immediately ran away because he wanted to deal with him. The young man asked Lin Zhuyan to take things and go to the office, that he had a couple of things in the city, and the girl did not ask anything and left. Meanwhile, Jing Hao walked along the red carpet, and in front there were people who met him with respect. Out of respect for the master, people in white shirts bowed, greeting him, and the hero silently walked forward. Being unemotional, he took off his sunglasses and said that he had finally returned to Lenion, where he was waiting. Soon he was on the estate, where he ordered his subordinates to continue to work to collect information about traders and traders. The servant said that recently some members of the Yanyang family have been seen in connection with the Shuhuan Bloody Alliance. He added that the missing Ini, probably, was also a man who previously stood at the head of the secret movement directed against them. The young man also said that the sister of Mufan Tsumukan was in trouble, and as they know, this is due to tea. Jing Hao immediately jumped up and ordered to immediately find this man and kill. Then, as a sister of the deceased comrade the road to him, then he asked his subordinate where and when everything would take place. And the man replied that at 7 o'clock in the Tianlin Club, the embittered hero ordered to cordon off this place, and not to let anyone in and not let anyone out. And the servant suggested buying this club. Soon Jing Hao stood on the street, where a male voice said that he understands why he was behaving so brazenly, because he lives in Tianhai. It was Fan Bin, who said that the hero contacted his whole great family and will answer for his stupid act in the plane. He added that he would spare only if the hero knelt before him and very passionately kiss his boots. Jing Hao could not tolerate such humiliation, as a result of which he was very angry and used a special reception, calling the guy a discharge. At that very moment, the impudent Fan Bin was bleeding, while not having the slightest chance to stay alive after a special reception. The cold-blooded protagonist began to go away, saying that the guy buried himself, and a large puddle of blood remained in place. The servant said that in anger the master becomes even stronger, so the T-clan has no chance to confront him. Madame Siyu Mukan, meanwhile, went down to the hall where a man in a suit said that for 2 whole months he could not get to her, and had to connect connections. The girl asked Liu Xiao to say directly that the clan tea was needed from her, and the guy offered to sit down to start. He reached for her hand, and Mukan displeasedly asked to monitor the behavior. But the young man asked why she was building herself in a short time. The insidious Liu Xiao said that today she will finally become him, and added that the club's people have already surrounded this club, so no one would save her. The bastard showed her a photo from the university and asked if she would dress like that for him. And Su pushed him away from her, screaming that he was abnormal. Suddenly, 2 subordinates Liu Xiao broke in the room, who excitedly told boss that problems had appeared. At the same second, a powerful explosion occurred, as a result of which they flew to the side, almost losing their lives. The panicking guard wondered who dared to do this, and everything around began to flare up rapidly. The cold-blooded Jing Hao acquired the surprised Zhu Mukan by the waist and asked the man why this information was not a resident. A delighted girl cried with happiness and asked if he was true, and the hero replied that, and now she was safe and could rely on him. The young man acquired a Tsumukan and said that he had returned, and she continued to cry and asked if he knew how much she was worried about him. The enraged Liu Xiao was very dissatisfied with what he saw and wondered how this guy dared to break here. He immediately ordered the bodyguards not to stand as if they were dug and kill the insolent, who boldly destroyed all his plans. Jing Hao asked if it was true that this was his dying desire, and Su said that it was the son of the leader of the T clan, so it is better to leave the hero. Liu Xiao laughed treacherously and said that he had to run late and threatened that he would kill the young man in front of his girlfriend, and they reported to the hero that the club was under his control. Then he looked sternly into the enemy's eyes and said that he had not run away from anyone in this life, and certainly he would not beg him to beg to. The son of the leader of the clan asked not to overestimate himself and added that 2 guards would equal him with the ground, and if not they, then a dozen of his people. Next was a sharp order for the bodyguards to attack the protagonist, after which they rushed at him, but he did not take his eye. Jing Hao used the ability and said that in his world Liu Xiao is just a bug, who in vain angered him. After these words, the fire of retaliation was used, which safely knocked down 3 bodyguards. Frightened Liu Xiao sat on the floor and was dumbfounded by incredible force, while wondering who this is, the Jin Hao this is really. The cold-blooded hero began to approach him, and Liu Xiao to call for help, after which the hero asked if he should not beg for mercy. Jing Hao, with his palm, closed the eyes of Mukan standing nearby, asking her to simply close them and completely rely on him. The son of the leader exclaimed that he was a follower of Xuan-kun from the T clan, so it is impossible to kill him. The protagonist looked at him maliciously and asked him in a stern tone, is he really daring to blame him for something? Liu Xiao quietly took out a bomb from a jacket, realizing that he had no other choice and wondering who this guy is. But all his plans went downhill and the bomb broke into small units, and Jing Hao asked, he really wanted to take them for himself. The shocked guy asked how he found out and who he was at all, and the hero replied that he was asking too many questions and finally asked to die. After that, he used the ability which at the same moment killed Liu Xiao and began to leave, carrying the tired Ku Muhan in his arms. In the car, the girl said that he was too quick, tempered, and Jing Hao simply said that when he was nearby, no one would offend her in this world, because he gave the floor to a muftin. Sumukan asked where he stopped and added that if she wanted, she could live with her, and the young man replied that she would be happy to accept her offer. 4 years ago, the girl lost herself, but fortunately Jing Hao was able to survive, and she suggested that Mufin was also glad that he had returned. Soon they entered the house of Mukan, where she asked the hero when he returned, because he did not even call her, and he replied that only yesterday. After a while, the young man prepared a steak, and the girl said that it seems to be not very hungry, but for a long time she had not tried it. Then, with an unpleasant sentiment in the shower, she said that the Mufin also liked how Jing Hao was preparing. Nevertheless, Kumukan decided to change the subject and see how much better the main character began to prepare since their last meeting. After some time, Jing Hao washed the dishes, and the girl invited him to go to rest, but he replied that he would cope. Ku asked why he returned to the city, and the hero replied that he returned for the sake of revenge. Then how he should take revenge on the people who killed Mufin. After these words, the girl immediately came up and hugged the young man from the back, and he looked at her with little surprise. She asked the floor that he would take care of himself, and then added that she had already lost her brother and did not want to lose Jing Hao. The hero firmly said that he had gained strength in order to protect everyone who was dear to him, and promised that he was not next to her while he would happen to her. Suddenly, Jing Hao went towards the door and said that he needed to figure out something and promised to return soon. And the CU was very worried. In the meantime, there was a deep night on the street, and 3 sports cars stopped near a high-story building at one moment. The bodyguard in the black official suit opened the back door of one of the cars so that the respected boss would go out. The leader of the T clan, Evil Liu Kai, said that whoever it was, he dared to kill his son, and today he will lose his life. The bodyguard told the boss that Sumukan was in this building and added that she was the last person with whom Liu Xiao met. At the entrance to the building, there was a guard who did not have time to ask who they were, because the cold-blooded bodyguard immediately shot him. Liu Kai ordered Alai to control the gate, and then told Chan that they needed to be careful, after which the guy said that all enemies were waiting for death. The leader of the clan said that today he would retire the skin from this girl and give her bones to mercy to dogs. because his son died because of her. But unexpectedly, the two bodyguards of the clan were shot, which immediately made everyone else nervous. One of the bodyguards said that it was a flame, and in a panic asked the boss to help, but he was only asked to bend down. The fierce Liu Kai asked the stranger not to hide, and a lie said that they need to be neat because this person has a huge force of a warrior. Ahead they saw a male silhouette, whose voice said that it was the faint destiny and began to approach them. It turned out that it was a cold-blooded Jing Hao, who said that darkness had a sky and added that he was very lucky that they came here themselves. The leader of the T-clan Clantan looked coldly and told the guy that if he was eager to kill someone, then they have one goal. Chung asked boss to be neat, but Liu Kai said that no matter what a great warrior a stranger would be, today death would be of him. Jing Hao called the leader of the clan a miserable insect, overstanding his forces, which sounded very loudly. Liu Kai asked the protagonist whether he killed his son Liu Xiao, and he in response said that he did not remember the names of those whom he killed. The man fell into a fury and called the guy an arrogant geek, after which he added that today, even God himself would not save him. The cold-blooded Jing Hao waved a sharp blade and deprived the leader of the clan of his hand, saying that he acts too slowly. Then the young man asked, "Is it really all that a man is capable of, who so loudly declared that he would wipe him into powder?" Chan Jiangfei came to the rescue and exclaimed that he was from Swankun members, after which he asked the name of the protagonist. Jing Hao in response only said that he was not worthy to know his name, that he was annoying the wounded leader who was standing at his feet on his knees. The fierce Liu Kai exclaimed that if Cheng Jianfei brings him the bastard's head, then he would make him the richest and most influential in the city. Chung said that he doesn't care who the main character is, what kind of family he is, but today, he will make him silent forever. Boar annoyed the hero and he asked to chat smaller, and finally attack, to quickly end all this. At that very moment, Cheng Jiangfei used the second ranking technique, which was called the Palm of Death. Jing Hao was not at a loss and evaded the blow, moving from side to side, and gradually I get close to the enemy. With a deft movement, he waved a sharp blade, thereby cutting 3 bodyguards and saying that all this is useless. The barely breathing Chan Jiangfei was shocked by such a quick defeat and struggled that this could not be. Jing Hao silently looked at the dark sky and moon, and behind him there was a small crowd of not residents who longed to kill him. The observer on the roof reported on the phone that the boss of the T-clan with his people came to avenge Liu Kai, but they were all killed. The boss asked if he found out who this guy was, and the agent replied that at first glance he was very young, but had great force. The man ordered him to follow him, and added that he did not want something unforeseen to happen, because the relationship between the countries is very shaky. Jing Hao returned home, where the excited Kumukan asked what kind of people they were, and he asked just to remember that now she was safe. The girl said that the Tao family is organizing a youth seminar, and she would like the hero to go there with her. The young man remembered that the Tao family is one of the influential families on which Jing Xiang spoke, and he began to hope that he would not have to worry. At one point, the hero felt that outside the window was an observer who froze with fear, because he realized that he was noticed. The ninja was deprived of the limb and realized that Jing Hao had even greater force than he expected and decided that he needed to inform the commander. The next day, the hero was in front of the building of the company to study biotechnologies and reflected on the Tao family. He recalled how the servant read to him the information that he got on the orders of Jing Hao because it was very important. The servant said that in Tianlan there are families Tao, Shu, and Chan, but Tao stands out among all of them because there are 3 great warriors in their subordination. At that moment, Jing Hao carefully listened to the collected information and said that the subordinate had a good job. The hero understood that influential families became too weak, and it would be possible to easily use 1 or even 2 families, like their pawns. His thoughts were interrupted by the charming Kumukan, who called him, and the young man waved his hand to see him. The girl smiled and asked if her dress was going, and the young man replied that Miss Tsumukan was seized in such an evening dress for the first time. After some time, the red car stopped near the Tao family mansion, where the guests of the seminar were already gathering. Jing Hao showed respect and extended his hand to CYU Mukan, who was sitting in the car and which was very pleasant. Suddenly, someone began to call her, and turning aside, the girl saw Jing Yao, who waved her glad to see. Xu Jing Yao asked who it was with her, and Su Mukan said that it was her boyfriend Jing Hao, and the girl was glad to hear that she had a guy. Then she, with a sincere smile, extended her hand to the main character and said that she was very pleased to meet him. But the young man created an awkward situation by the fact that they held out his hand in response and simply silently looked into her eyes. Then he took the hand of the puzzled Kumukan, telling her that the meeting soon would begin to go inside. Xu Jingyao became angry, and in her thoughts called him uncultural, wondering if he really thinks that she had not met such handsome men as he was. Suddenly, a guy appeared who recognized the beauty Zhu Mukan and asked if the president of the company Hanfen himself came to the mansion. But his companion with a mockery asked if such a small company was invited to such a prestigious seminar. The young man suddenly got angry and screamed her to close her mouth, thereby frightening the girl and bringing her to tears. In his thoughts, he said that he heard many times that Sumukan was very beautiful, but she was just incomparable life. Then the young man touched the mistress and introduced himself, like Chan Qing, the senior family, and asked if she wanted to make him a company. Sumukan looked angrily into his eyes and asked to keep herself in his hands, and he asked what could come from one touch. Suddenly, Jing Hao hit him with all his might, thereby throwing him aside and said that this was the answer to his question. Chan Qing slipped a few centimeters face on the asphalt, and his companion was very frightened and was afraid that he would be severely injured. Sumukan was very excited, and the hero said that it doesn't matter who this guy is because it does not give him the right to touch her. He put his hand on her shoulder and they began to leave, and Xu Jingyao realized that he was very strong and that is why Mukan loved him. A friend of Chan Qing began to raise a guy and said that you could not forgive such a daring act from the side of the mistress and her boyfriend. The young man suddenly grabbed her by the waist to facilitate his lifting from his knees, and the girl was a little scared. Barely restraining the tears, he asked how this bondage dared to raise his hand on him and said that today he would pay for what he had done. Chan Qing on the phone ordered to surround Chan's house and take a great warrior with him because he wants to deal with a man, holding the scratched cheek with his palm. In his thoughts, the guy said that today Sumukan would not hide from him. Meanwhile, a lot of people who drank the wine and sincerely communicated inside the mansion. Sumukan said that the whole elite of the city gathered in the Tao family, and Su Jingyao said that their influence is very great. Jingyao asked Jing Hao why he was silent and really numb from what he saw, and Mukan warned that it was better not to make fun of him. Suddenly, a girl appeared in a red dress who turned to Madame Ku Mukan, who immediately turned around. Xiaojun turned to her, who was the general director of the corporation of the Rui of the Ru, and noticed that the mistress was lingered. Xiaojun asked Sumukan, did she really have a guy? And when she had time and the face of Jing Hao seemed very familiar to her, the mistress was awkwardly giggled in her hand and said that Xiaojun and her boyfriend have been familiar for a long time, but she simply did not remember that. The general director immediately tensed very much because I realized that this is the same Jing Hao. The young man said that they had not seen each other for a long time and added that she had changed a lot over the past 4 years. He held out her hand to say hello, but Xiaojun immediately pushed him away and asked not to touch her. Xiaojun struck her behavior, and asking for forgiveness from Sumukan, said that she needed to leave. Madame told Jing Hao that he himself knows how Jun was close to Mu Fen, but someday she could understand that this is not his fault. After a while, men who were interested in its developments in the field of biotechnology approached Sumukan. The girl smiled at the main character, told her to communicate a little, and will come to him a little later, and he said that he would wait. Jing Hao went to Xiaojun and asked if she wanted to tell him something, because he only did what he was looking at him. With tears in her eyes, she exclaimed that 4 years ago, Mu Feng died because of him, and he, without saying anything, simply disappeared. The girl said that since he had left, it would be better not to return. But he also came up in the guy's CU and asked if he had a conscience at all. Listening to the claims silently, Jing Hao recalled that in the dark, when he was without a penny, his father Zhuyan, Xiao Minju, literally saved him. Mu Fen and Su Mukan too, only thanks to their uncle, received a good education and did not need anything. The hero said that he was grateful to the family of Xiaojun for everything, and he returned in order to take revenge on the death of Mu Fen and said that he was ready to do everything. The girl said that he was a coward who chose to leave everyone to run away and asked the next time to stay away from her. Jing Hao did not matter what opinion she was about him, and he knew that in any case he would pay her family for everything that they did for him. Taking revenge on Mu Fen, he remembered that all influential families of Tianlan have great wars, and from the report of Jing Xian, it was clear that the Tao family was the strongest. Suddenly, the thought of the protagonist was interrupted by a girl who sat nearby and asked, was he not a guy Mukan? A cute beauty with reddened cheeks asked the young man how he was here completely alone without a companion. She took Jing Hao by the hand and said that with such a decent girl as Tsu Mukan, He was probably very boring. Then the girl asked the protagonist if she could brighten up his evening, but he was coldly about her. Spanningly, Jing Hao gave the girl a strong slap in the face, knocking her a tooth, and asked to immediately fail from here. The girl with tears in her eyes grabbed the swollen cheek, and with a cry began to call for help, saying that they were killed right in the house of the Tao family. 3 guards immediately ran into the room, who asked who dared to rob in the Tao family. Jing Hao said that the girl is miserable and her death would not mean anything. And the guard said that if he approaches another step, they will act. The main one ordered the rest to immediately grab the protagonist, who was an incredible danger to others. The protagonist, on the other hand, without much effort scattered their sides, asking not to overestimate himself, and the panic around intensified. The great warrior used the ability and said that now the turn of the girl who disturbed his peace came. With a sharp movement, he involved his ability and she was thrown aside, after which she hit her back against the wall. Chanqing was angry at the hero for daring to raise his hand on Ji Xin, and ordered Master Bai to deal with him. Jing Yao was curious to see what Jing Hao was capable of, and Xiaojun understood that with his actions he could drag Mukun into trouble. Master Bai said that whoever was a young man, since he dared to hit the members of their family, then only death awaits him. An elderly man in appearance of a man with a sharp jerk rushed at the protagonist, used the technique of blowing with his palm. Chanqing understood that if this busty had not hit Ji Xin, he would not be able to find the reason to kill him right here. Jing Hao waved his fist and asked not to laugh, and Master Bai spat out blood and was shocked by his attack speed. Bai was imprinted in the wall with Chanqing and Jie Xin, and excited people around were shocked by the fact that the master was defeated. The shocked Chanqing could not believe that the master won some upstart, and he called it impossible. The alarmed Siyu Mukun asked Jing Hao to leave until they were seized, but he replied that while he was nearby, no one would touch her. Xu Jingyao was very surprised by his coolness, and Xiaojun, on the contrary, was very worried about Q Mukun. In the meantime, the death of the criminal clan of T, which has been controlled by the city, was discussed in the office. Meanwhile, Master Lion said that if Sunji's words about the murder of the leader of the clan is true, then this does not promise the best perspective. Sunji said that if this is true, then the person who killed him clearly has great power, and they are obliged to take precautions. A guard suddenly burst into the room, who exclaimed that they had a fight below, and came the great warrior from the Chan's family. Hunsa exclaimed that he would go and deal with this, and Xiongji asked him to calm down and said that there was clearly something wrong there, since the warrior was acting. The father advised his son to simply invite the enemy here and be neat, as well as polite in order to prevent oversight. Suddenly, the codes of the room were defeated by the dead body of the dead man, which dumbfounded everyone in him. Hunsa went to the window, whose glasses were knocked out, and downstairs saw Jing Hao, who was the very enemy. Shocked people around did not understand how he could do this, and said that he clearly could not leave here alive after that. The trembling with fear of Jai Xin still sat on the floor and said that the main character is crazy. The excited Ku Mukun asked the hero if he was overgrown with, but he replied that he had a sense of proportion, and she could not worry. Hunsi jumped out the window and exclaimed that if the main character had a sense of proportion, he would not have killed him. Jing Hao asked. He really thinks that he could kill him, and an embittered guy exclaimed that he would do it easily. He used the technique and said that if the hero could withstand his blow, he can assume that the Tao family belongs to him. The gambling protagonist laughed slightly and said that in this case, all of them will definitely become his servants. Tao Hunsi did not hesitate and rushed at him, shouted loudly that he was wrapping a dashless smile from his face. The absolutely calm Jing Hao stood still, grinning treacherously, and Sumukan was very worried about him and held his hand tightly. The enemy, meanwhile, approached closely and touched the hero's chest with his fist, who did not even move. The guy was eager to put an end to the main character who dared to behave like that in the house of the great family of Tao. He froze in the place when Jing Hao looked sternly into his eyes and said that the anger of the weak means nothing to the great. After that, a confident guy was thrown back in himself as a strong blow of the protagonist, which made him fall into a stupor. Hunsa was shocked by the fact that the internal power of Jing Hao was so great that he could, doing nothing, easily discard him. The main character approached the horror of a frightened guy and asked which of them now did not know his measure, and he only trembled in response. The guy began to cry, and his father, Sunji, fell to his knees in front of the hero and began to beg for the mercy of his son, promising to do anything. Jing Hao realized that they would be able to agree, and the man asked him to go to the second floor and said that gifts from the family would not be forced to regret. The young man took the hands of Kumukan and asked if she agreed to go with him, and the girl smiled and immediately agreed. Xu Jingyao was delighted with the situation, and Xiaojun wondered what happened over the years and how the hero became so strong. Soon they climbed into the office and Jinghao asked where the gifts, and Sunji smiled insidiously, saying something under his breath. Then he turned his head and exclaimed that the best gift from the Tao family was 3 great warriors who were ordered to kill them. Surprised people said that the power of Jinghao at least corresponds to the power of the great warrior of the level of Yuan Jing, and they are clearly waiting for a change of power. A satisfied young man was sitting on the chair, drinking wine, who asked the servant not to be lazy and pay attention to guests. The subordinate respected him with respect and said that he would do everything that he said this minute. Xiaojun looked at the young man sitting in the chair, who seemed familiar to her, but she could not remember him. Xu Jingyao said that this is the same Yu Minlin from the Xiao family and asked the girl if she really likes him. In response, she laughed and said that she was simply surprised how the Tao family was respectfully treated. But the curious Yao continued to be interested. A curious girl asked if they had something, and the angry Xiaojun exclaimed that there was nothing like that. But on this, Xu Jingyao did not stop and continued to fantasize, looking at the ceiling, which annoyed the girl standing nearby. Sunji ordered Jinghao to join the Tao family, promising that leaving everything that happened in the past and would help him deal with Chan's family. The hero was not at all scared and asked, he really thinks that he was able to subjugate him to himself, and Sumukan was surprised how he pressed her close to himself. The man said that now 2 warriors of what level and strength are facing the young man, that he, plus a warrior who has achieved Yuanzin in full force. Then he added that Jinghao has a choice, to obey him or die, but these threats did not scare him at all. The main character grinned and showed the index finger that there were a little incomprehensible people around him. Sungi strained a little and said that Jinghao was too far ringing the price, because 1 million is not lying on the road. But as it turned out, it was not about money at all, and the main character ordered Sunji to kneel before him. Everyone around was shocked by such a loud statement and lurked their breath with excitement, silently watching what was happening. Sunji was dumbfounded by the Jinhao was a Linzin warrior, which he did not even suspect, and exclaimed that this could not be. Sumukan looked at the protagonist with admiration and was completely convinced that he really became much stronger than before. Jinghao approached the man standing on his knees and looking at him sternly, asked to make a choice. The young man laid his leg on his neck and ordered him to obey him or die, which forced everyone around even more nervous. Tao Sunji was very confused and began to panic, gradually realizing that his life was on the verge of death. The main character used his abilities, said that he has only 3 seconds to make an important decision. The reverse countdown began, and Sunji wondered how he could obey the boy who almost killed his son. He began to expire with a huge amount of sweat and came to the conclusion that if he did not, then Jinghao would kill them all. The man hit the floor with his head and loudly stated that from now on the Tao family obeys the will of the protagonist, which he demanded of them. But unexpectedly, Jinghao arrogantly stated that their family was useless, which was very surprised at everyone around. Jinghao added that useless creatures are not worthy to live, and Sunji swore that the Tao family would prove his value to him. The hero, with the help of his ability, created the plant and asked him to remember his words, after which he took Mukan by the waist and they began to leave. The plant turned out to be healing, and Hunza gradually began to recover, slowly breathing in its persistent aromas. After a few seconds, the young man completely recovered, enjoying a pleasant feeling. Sunji immediately jumped up and was very glad that his son woke up, and Hunza was a little confused because he did not understand what was happening. The surprised young man touched his face and asked with surprise if his wounds disappeared, which he did not expect at that moment at that. The head of the family, with respect, leaned and thanked Jinghao, who silently left for the charming Siyu Mukan. People in the hall wondered what with the guy who climbed the second floor with Sunji, because there has been a lot of time. Smiling Yu Minlin danced with Xu Jingyao, realizing that he had come to an end to the Tao family, because their great warrior became in their way. The girl said that he was dancing very ugly for other things while he was dancing, and the young man said that, on the contrary, he was too carried away by her beauty. The cheeks Xu Jingyao were blushed with awkwardness, and she said that Yu Minlin is already too sweet, fat. Then she asked if he knew something about what was happening upstairs, and the young man did not know what to answer her. Nevertheless, he asked the girl, why would she not ask them herself if she wants to know about what is happening upstairs? Everyone around drew attention to those descending from the second floor, Jing Hao and Sumukan, which was amazing for everyone. The servant said that he ordered, and the hero would soon be taken from here, but he replied that he had still important things here. Surprised, Kumukan looked at the protagonist and asked what kind of important things he had, because he did not say anything to her. Jing Hao said that his only important thing is the invitation of the beauty to the dance, which very surprised her. The beauty was very pleasant and she flushed, and then took the young man by the hand to start dancing. At that moment, Tsumukan seemed that she was in a dream, where all her dreams became a reality and she enjoyed every moment. The girl recalled how, in childhood, on the beach, she asked Jing Hao who she was for him, and the young man replied that she was like a sister for him. She hugged him tightly and wondered whether she could expect to become not only a sister for him. Shunchi watched them from the second floor and said that Jing Hao is clearly the killer of the leader of the Ko-Clan Yutan. The nervous Tao Hunsi asked his father if he was sure of his words because this guy is a rather strong opponent. The man said that a few minutes ago Jing Hao almost killed them all and now calmly dances with his girlfriend. Xu Jingyao approached the pretty main character and asked if he would honor her, and he only looked at her silently. Then the hero, without even listening to the girl, replied that no, but she was shocked and froze in place. She wondered if he really refuses her dance so directly, and Jing Hao told Sumukan that it was time for them to leave. Xu Jingyao gathered all her courage into a fist, and in her thoughts said that she could achieve this guy and should not worry. The girl went to the TSU and said that she invites her with a young man to a solemn banquet that her family is organizing. Sumukan asked Jing Hao if he wanted to go, and he said that they would come and see that the Shu family would do in order to interest him. Tao Sunji, meanwhile, asked Hongjie to go down and spend the master, and the young man immediately obeyed. Suddenly, the wall in the room was blown up that she plunged into a stupor of a young man who froze on the spot. A masked man burst into the room, which was dressed in special equipment for combat missions. He led a gun on Hunsa and ordered everyone to lie, threatening that he would kill anyone who moves, and then added that a military dragon and a hawk were acting. The mansion was surrounded, and the commander of the Linzuyan on the street ordered the detachment to surround this place and prevent anyone from escaping. The members of the military detachment Dragon and the Hawk carefully listened to the order of the commander, who began to go aside. Linzuyan demonstrated its combat skills, the first time knocking out a stone wall of the mansion. Jing Hao immediately covered the frightened Siyu Mukan, realizing that he was obliged to protect her from danger in any case. The red-haired girl from the military detachment recognized the protagonist and, grinning, said that they met again. Hunsa asked the member of the special detachment what they were doing here, and he replied that they were looking for one person and advised them to obey and not interfere. The young man got angry and, gritting his teeth, asked what would happen if he was not going to obey the people unknown to him. The mercenary from the military detachment did not waste time on chatter and decided to demonstrate everything in practice, shooting at the guy. Tao Sunji managed to react in time and use the ability of the shield to protect his son from sudden death. A member of the military detachment said that he had already said that he would kill anyone who would stand in their way and interfere with the operation. The frightened Siyu Mukan, meanwhile, was hiding behind Jing Hao, who used the skills to protect her. Then the main character sternly looked into the eyes of the commander of the military detachment and said that she scared his girlfriend. Lin Suyan smiled and admitted that he really has the power of a great warrior, which he was completely convinced. The mercenaries were ready to shoot, and the commander asked the hero where Fan Bin disappeared, and added that she knew that the young man knew where he was. Jing Hao strengthened the ability, creating a shield around him, which strained the mercenaries and forced to move away a few steps back. The hero understood that now is not the best time to destroy the dragon and hawk, and asked if they had evidence of this. Lin Juyan said that she has pictures from cameras, which show how he and Fan Binim go to the same place, and only a hero comes out. Jing Hao was not at all at a loss and asked if this was their evidence, and the mercenary was ready to shoot him. The girl went up to him and asked, did he really think that he was so cool and fearless? And then said that he would show him that this was not so. The young man said that if they allow the frightened Siyu Mukan to leave here, he will tell everything he knows. Lin Suyan immediately snapped a finger and ordered the mercenaries to lead a sweet girl to a safe place. Sumukan did not want to leave, but Jing Hao said that she would better leave and asked not to worry, saying that he would understand. The mercenaries began to take the crying girl, and the Lin Suyan was left alone with the main character and asked what he could tell. For an unknown reason, Jing Hao suddenly laughed, and the girl asked in bewilderment, was it really fun? The hero put his palm to his head and said that he could tell her, but he considered it completely optional. After these words, a loud explosion suddenly thundered, which undermined the wall in the area of the front door of the mansion. On the threshold of the mansion stood a detachment of mercenaries, whose commander asked where these geeks from the Dragon and Hawk detachment. He directed the pistol at Jing Hao, standing ahead, and asked if he was one of the members of this detachment. The cold-blooded protagonist grabbed his hand, after which a shot was immediately fired in his own head. The people around were shocked, and Lin Zhuyan asked with great surprise that Jing Hao really died. The girl immediately rushed to the main character lying on the floor, simultaneously wondering how he could die. The shocked mercenary exclaimed that this psycho himself pressed the trigger, and the Lin Zhuyan began to feel the pulse of the hero. Suddenly, Jing Hao opened his eyes and with a smile said that the beautiful Lin Zhuyan has a rather pretty face. The frightened girl immediately bounced to the side, loudly calling him an idiot who behaved like a small child. The tense Lin Zhuyan wondered how he managed to get out of the control of the Dragon and Hawk. The mercenary brought a gun on her and asked what kind of black magic it was if she had a dragon and hawk shape. Suddenly, a bullet flew into his body, who immediately killed a man, and a bloodied gun immediately fell out of his hands. Dissatisfied, Lin Zhuyan said that he took her very much and she has no mood at the moment. Sunji suddenly landed on the floor, who firmly stated that the Tao family was still one of the most influential in the city. The leader of the family ordered the rest of the members to kill everyone, not showing any mercy that they immediately began to fulfill. Family members dealt with mercenaries without making special efforts, but they did not even have time to resist. The joyful Hunsa exclaimed that these guys from the military detachment Dragon and the Hawk were not as strong as it seemed. 3 mercenaries decided to deal with Sunji as soon as possible, who was the leader of the family, and ordered their murder. But at the same moment, each of them was devoid of life, and the leader of a powerful family did not even take a step aside. The angry Lin Zhuyan called the family with scum and asked how they dare to resist her. After some time, Jing Hao stood on the bridge with Su Mukan, who asked why people from the Dragon and Hawk were looking for him. The young man said that she should not worry, and realized that the Lin Zhuyan, who was looking for him, was not quite ordinary warrior because of this detachment. He said that 4 years ago he did not have enough strength to protect the CU, but now no one would dare to offend her. The girl looked at the compressed fist of Jing Hao and struggled, and then said that she believed and always believed him. Sumukan took the protagonist by the hand and said that she missed him all these years, and he tensed a little. The bottomless green eyes looked at the young man, and at one point the girl said that she wanted to become more for him than just with her sister. Suddenly, a stranger approached her, who asked whether it was possible to give her a flower, but asked her to be neat. He added that the spikes of the rose could prick the Kumukan, but instead of the rose, the blade appeared, which the stranger swung at the girl. Killer's task was to deal with the mistress, to whom he waved a blade, and she was a little confused. At the last moment before applying a knife blow, Jing Hao, using the ability, created a shield that saved the girl's life. Then the hero looked sternly at the killer and said that he was completely insolent, and the Tsumukan was surprised that she remained alive. The killer was thrown aside with a blow, but at the same time he remained conscious and was not going to retreat from his goal. He managed to quickly react and fell to his knee, slipping a few centimeters but having the opportunity to continue to fight. Jing Hao said in a stern tone that anyone who dares to raise his hand to the Tsumukan will only receive death. The killer stuck out his tongue and began to laugh, calling the protagonist cruel, but his serious face caused only laughter. Then the killer warned the young man and asked to be careful, saying that he himself was very fast. He rushed with a fight at Jing Hao, exclaiming that he was as fast as lightning, but the hero remained cold. Jing Hao managed to evade the blow, and the killer was nervous and wondered how he managed to leave. The main character took advantage of the chance and struck a blow that threw the enemy to the side, but he remained conscious. The killer admitted that he was not bad, because he even became a little interested in fighting him, and then added that he was right and the hero is really strong. Jing Hao still remained serious and asked who his boss was, since he was so praised him behind him. Killer said that if he wants to know, then his boss, you must first try not to die after the next attack. The main character threatened in a stern tone that if he did not say, he would be killed, but the bastard did not obey him at all and rushed to the attack. The young man used the ability, clicking his finger, and the enemy continued to approach him at a frantic speed. The killer, like a werewolf, asked the hero not to think that he was so weak and soon came across his face. He barked and growled like an evil dog while using the death bite to deal with Jing Hao as soon as possible. The werewolf bit the protagonist by the sleeve, and Sumukan was very worried and then expired from fear. Jinghao pulled out his hand and said that he had not even felt a werewolf bite, and the girl asked if his hand hurt. The hero realized that this was Cerberus, who since childhood changed human blood to the dog, and added that he reminded him of the not rainbow past. Cerberus licked his lips and asked the young man, was it really a cry of despair, but he immediately replied that this was not so at all. Then he picked up his powerful blade and said with a smile that he was too bored with killing. The werewolf said that he met in his life a lot of arrogant, like Jinghao, but he was pleased that he was the one who cut off their talkative languages to them all. The hero grinned and asked if he wanted him to do the same with him, and Cerberus was angry that the young man underestimated him. At that very moment, a sharp jerk was perfect towards Jinghao, who immediately used his magic blade. The werewolf was thrown aside, and the realization came to him that it would be very difficult for him to deal with the main character. Jinghao immediately used a shot of a crimson thunder, and the enemy understood that he could not get away from a blow. Then the sacred fire was used, which plunged Cerberus into an even greater stupor, and he could not resist this. Clothing on his body began to burn and turn into ashes, which was very strained at that moment, but did not confuse him. Cerberus, with a sharp movement, took himself a sweater and told Jinghao that he would not be able to burn him, no matter how he tried. The killer said loudly that he would easily withstand any test of fire, and the hero asked if he really thinks that the surprises were ending on this. Jinghao looked into the enemy's eyes with a grin, and said that he would not be able to leave here alive today. After these words, he waved a magic sword to quickly deal with the enemy and leave. Cerberus fell to his knees, and the protagonist began to impose the name of his boss because this information was important. The enemy was not at all scared and unexpectedly began to laugh, which caused some tension among the hero. Suddenly, the werewolf changed in his face, turning into Fanbin, who laughed maliciously and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. The mercenary in the Tao family mansion, meanwhile, waved his fist and asked the Lin Zhuyan where her coolness had gone. The girl was thrown aside with a blow and understood that she had no strength at all, and the enemy asked her to beat. Lin Zhuyan wondered how they dared to attack their detachment at all, and drops of sweat flowed across her face. The mercenary directed the gun to her head and said that she was the first to kill, but now her turn has come to die. Sweat and tears flowed down the girl's face, and in her thoughts she said that she could not die now because not everything had time yet. The shot was carried out, but the girl was protected by a suddenly appeared sharp sword, which took the whole blow to himself. Lin Zhuyan was very surprised, and a suddenly appeared young man with a huge sword ordered the mercenary not to dare to touch her. The mercenary tensed, because I immediately realized that this young man is the leader of the Dwan family, Yun Tao. Members of the Tao family wondered why he came here, and one of them advised boss to be more accurate because this person is very strong. Yun Tao did not hesitate and ordered all the warriors from the Dragon and Hawk detachment to get up with a loud cry so that he could see them. The mercenaries began to rise, and the young man stood in a slow step to go forward, where the family members stood. The warriors from the detachment of the Dragon and the Hawk welcomed the boss with the return, but he looked around. A pistol was assigned to Yun Tao, and Sunji said that the head of the Dragon and Hawk detachment brought them a treasure that was stolen from them. But the powerful young man immediately used the supersonic wave, and his eyes caught fire in the moment with rage. The bastard, who dared to present to his head, was thrown back in the direction of an incredibly powerful wave. Sunji was imprinted in the wall, and the shocked Tao Hunsi wondered if Yun Tao is a warrior of the Lenion level. The warrior said that he did not know and did not want to know what treasure they are talking about. But he knows one thing: who dares to attack his people, he is waiting for inevitable death. Then he waved his sword several times, thereby cutting in half the opponents who longed to kill him. Yun Tao approached Sunji because he wanted to turn to the Tao family and discuss some issues with them. The young man grabbed the leader of the family by the throat and asked who allowed their family to attack his people. And Sunji could not say anything. Lin Zhuyan asked the boss to let him go, saying that the Tao family simply followed the orders of Jinghao. Yun Tao let go of a barely breathing man and asked his subordinate who this Jinghao is, because he could not remember him. The main character, meanwhile, asked Cerberus whether he knew who he was, and the werewolf replied that they were very glad that they had met again. Jinghao ordered him to say his name, and Cerberus began to rise above the ground and said that he needed to know only one thing. He laughed frighteningly and said that the main character belongs to him, and the young man silently looked into his eyes. Yun Tao burned the Tao family mansion and, going out into the street, began to reflect on Jing Hao, calling all this interesting. Then he called Lin and asked for help to find one person who needs to be left alive so that everyone knew him as the darkest evil. The young man said that when he gives the world the lifeless body of Jing Hao, then he will not become a new hero. At that moment, he thought about the main character and said that he could not worry, because the hunt for him only began. Meanwhile, Lin told his associate that they would adhere to the plan of Yun Tao in order to avoid trouble. He said that if Jing Hao is weaker than Yun Tao, he could live a little more, but if not, then the girl should erase him into powder. The professional mercenary carefully listened to the mentor and promised that she would do everything in the best possible way. Going to the door, the girl grinned and said that according to the head, it should be pleasant to kill, so she was curious. A few minutes later, she was on the street, where at one moment she heard a strange rustle and paid attention to him. From nowhere, a powerful fist flew into the girl, which she did not expect at all at that moment and was even a little confused. Nevertheless, the mercenary managed to react and put the block in time, felt to hit, and admitted that he was very strong. In her way, a young man stood in a white suit who laughed and said that in front of her the gates of hell, calling the girl a monk. Then he looked with a smile. A tense mercenary asked her to leave, threatening, which otherwise would destroy. The mercenary realized that he was not worth anger, because he was extremely strong, and said that he was a servant of the Dwan family and she was ordered to arrive in the city. After the herd, the young man smiled and called it curious, and the girl continued to expire later. Behind her stood Jing Xiang, who called the Dwan naughty family and added that he likes the girl's personality and he would take her to himself. The mercenary called him a monster, and he ordered the subordinate to report to Jing Hao that Jing Xiang went to the Dwan family house. Tsumukan told the hero that she still had business at work, and he said that he would go about his own business, and then he would go after her. Young people smiled and waved to each other, after which they dispersed along their roads and delved into personal thoughts. The subordinate reported that the gentleman went to the Dwan family, and Jing Hao called them insignificants because they were interfering, even though they could harm. Then the hero looked at the sky and asked his subordinate if he found out for him something. As he asked, the man said that he checked all employees in biotechnological companies, and the master should pay attention to two. Jing Hao took a sheet from his hands and began to carefully read about the eldest daughter of the Dun family, who was called Dun Tinye. The next day, the protagonist came to the house of Dong Tinye, who went out to him and did not understand what he was doing here. Nevertheless, the girl smiled politely and asked how he got here and whether he had a meeting. Jing Hao did not answer her questions, immediately asked where the security, and the girl asked in bewilderment what he was talking about. The hero said that she had 3 seconds and added that if the guard does not appear, she would become food for a dark flame. Soon, the return counting came to an end. 2 guards appeared in front of the young man, one of whom asked why it was if they were not enemies. Jing Hao said that this was his greeting and a warning that it was better not to touch Mukan, and the men fell to his knees. Dun Tignaeus called all this nonsense and said that she had no harm in her thoughts, so all this is unreasonable. But the main character told the girl that this concerns 2 men, not her, because it was they who had bad intentions. Jing Hao threw a dark flame in his hand and threatened that if he once again finds out that they were monitoring the CU, he would not leave a wet place from them. The puzzled Dun Tinyu asked the Lord Lin, and what all this means. They lowered their heads with shame and said that they did not want to harm the Tsumukan. At one point in the door, Kuhana opened the door, who could not understand why it was so noisy here and wanted to find out what was the matter. The blue-eyed beauty Duntingus was very worried and did not know how to explain the situation that occurred. Jing Hao came to the rescue, who said that the guards of his old acquaintances and Dong thought, did he really help her because he liked her? Tsumukan asked the hero if all this was true, and he replied that, and added that he was just wanting to call Miss Dong to dare with them. After a while, the Trinity was in a restaurant where Jing Hao told Dong Tinye that she could choose what she likes, but she thanked him. The administrator approached them, who awkwardly apologized and said that this room was already reserved by others, and asked to go to another. The confident Jing Hao said that the rooms are usually engaged in order, and asked the one who wants to, he would come and discuss it with them. A rude, bold man pushed into the administrator and asked the hero to roll out of here, adding that girls could stay at the table. The cold-blooded Jing Hao asked Gubian who he was stared at, and whether he could help him go out if he wants him. The drunk man got angry and asked how he dares to talk like that and asked to apologize, threatening that he would cease to be polite. Jing Hao said that he has the last chance to get out of the institution alive, but in response, Ham threw a glass into him, which crashed against the wall. The hero remained cold-blooded, and the drunken Rude suddenly fell to his knees and panicked. Then, as he could understand what was happening, the man called him a boy and asked how he dares to raise his hand at him, and whether he was aware of who he was. Jing Hao said that since he had abandoned a chance, he would have to smear him on the floor, after which the impact was shook on the floor. The hero asked to make another bow, and the man fell into a rage and shouted at the top of his voice that he would kill him. But still, his arrogance quickly disappeared, and at one moment, with tears in his eyes, he asked Jing Hao forgiveness, admitting that he was wrong. Dun Tingyu was delighted that the main character was both beautiful and strong, after which she admitted to herself that she fell in love with him. The young man, meanwhile, threw a drunk man aside, asking his shocked others, which they crowded here. Frightened men began to scatter to horror, screaming that Jing Hao is crazy because he could kill and not blink an eye. The cold-blooded protagonist asked the Frozen on the side of the administrator to bring the order because he was very hungry. A man in glasses asked their associates what they were doing, but they trembled with fright and did not know how to explain the situation. Two frightened men told Mr. Qi that the stranger occupied his room, and they threw them out and asked him to deal with that crazy. Mr. Qi straightened his glasses, calling it entertaining, because the stranger dared to drive his people, which means that he is clearly not afraid of death. Then the man held out his hand in front of him and used the fiery ability to melt the wall and go to his place. Caught in front of Jing Hao, Mr. Qi asked in a calm tone whether he dared to brazenly expanding him. He threw his leg on the table, and the protagonist said in a harsh tone that he would follow them while he was still intact. The comrades, in arms of the master, called the young man abnormal and were sure that Qi would explain to him how they should not be treated. Qi said that in his whole life no one dared to drive him out, and Jing Hao said that it was because the same scum as him was spinning near him. These words were angry with the master, who used the Cobra technique and asked the protagonist not to become impudent. And the young man said that the ability to match him. With the help of his ability, Jing Hao tightly squeezed the head of the Cobra, which was ruled by Mr. Qi, which very alerted him. The main character's eyes turned red at one moment, filled with rage, and he was ready to teach the master. The man, frozen in place from fright, saw a faceless person in a mantle with an acute black scythe. Qi understood that it was necessary to act and tore his clothes on himself, being ready for a fight at any second. The table was broken, and the frightened Siyu Mukun asked Jing Hao to spare the poor fellow who clearly would not survive in this battle. The young man listened to the girl's words, after which he threw Qi to the side and said that he was very large. Qi fell to the floor and called the hero a monster, and behind him was the surprised Tao Hunse, who did not expect to see such a picture. The master asked the young man to take revenge on him, and Hunse maliciously stated that he would not leave a wet place on the one who attacked the master. But suddenly, a cold-blooded Jing Hao, who asked the dog barking at the owner, came out to a confident in himself. Tao Hunse was confused when he saw the hero, and he asked in a serious tone whether he should show how to do his work. Mr. Qi promised the confused young man that he would accept him into the ranks of the great warriors if he dealt with this person. He added that if this is so, then the Tao family will simply become famous as a family of great warriors, because they have been trying to become them for 3 years. Everyone around was alert, because Jing Hao approached the frightened Tao Hunse and said that his patience had come to an end. The young man immediately squeezed his fist tightly and hit Mr. Qi's jaw, who immediately spat out a little blood and was shocked. Then, holding on to the sick hand, asked those present to help him escort Qi Tsinchuania, and his associates were dumbfounded. Tao Hunse asked Jing Hao to forgive them for worrying him during a meal, and Mr. Qi began to withdraw his associates. The main character began to leave the premises, saying a young man that he could be free, to which he obeyed. Along the way, Dong Tinyu could not be able to get in love with the beauty of Jing Hao, and Su Mukan drew attention to the fact that the young man liked her. She grabbed the hero by the hand with a sharp movement and told the girl that it was already time for them to go, which surprised her. Dun Tignius waved her hand to young people and admitted to herself that this love at first sight cannot be denied. Sitting in the car, Su Mukan found the strength to ask Jing Hao what he thinks of Dun Tinye, who admires them. The girl asked if she also liked him, but the main character answered an unemotional that not at all. Su Mukan looked at him with great surprise, because he answered her question without any hesitation. The beautiful cheeks turned red, and she said that she was glad to do this. After which she looked down and began to be silent. Jing Hao wanted to touch the car, but suddenly, another car drove off, which created an emergency. Surprised, Siyu Mukun carefully looked closely and realized that this car was chewing, which was very unexpected. Near the car stood a guy with glasses, who said Miss Xiao with a smile that it was actually extremely difficult to meet her. The embittered Xiao Jian immediately got out of the window and asked Feng Shaozi if he would have enough to engage in nonsense. The assertive young man suggested dining and asked if she really does not think about his feelings at all, because he asks for a third time. The adamant girl asked to remove the car and said that she still has business. She has no time for dinner with him. Feng Shaozi asked what would happen if he did not remove the car, and Jing Hao suddenly hit his car with his foot and asked what he would do now. The angry young man immediately began to call and Biao, and the surprised and excited Xiao Juyan did not expect to see Jing Hao. And Biao did not respond, and the furious Feng Shaozi screamed with a scream where he was wearing, because there was a serious trouble. The young man suddenly crawled out from behind the car and scaredly told the master that he had to run, because this person is abnormal. Jing Hao fiercely looked at the self-confident Feng Xiaoche, using his ability, thereby causing him a severe pain. The hero threatened that if he sees again how he praises Xiao Juyan, he would beat, and Biao thanked that he left them alive. The displeased girl turned his nose over and thanked, adding that she did not ask for his help and could figure it out herself. The young man was turning his back to her and said that he helped her for her uncle, and these words were angry for the girl. Xiao Juyan drew attention to the fact that Su Mukan was again with Jing Hao and realized that for his sake, and not because of Mu Fenya, the girl thought deeply and wondered if it could be that she still clings to the past too much. At home, standing in front of the mirror, Jing Hao thought that the person who sent Cerberus should be somehow connected with those people. Siyu Mukun approached the young man, who asked if he knew that she was very missing him while he was absent. The girl gently pressed herself against the hero and said that now that he was returning, she was worried every day that he would be troubles. Jing Hao took the beauty promise that he would protect her, and nothing would happen to him, which reassured the girl. He began to sort out the strands of the girl's delicate white hair and said that he really likes the delicious smell of the Su Mukan, which sounded very pleasant for her. Feng Shaozi, meanwhile, was in the hospital and, being angry, said on the phone that he was beaten. At the same time, Dwan Yuntao was in the Dwan office and asked the young man if there was any news. Lin was in the office of the head of the family and asked to report, and the mercenary said that the young man was quick, tempered, but there would be no problems for him. In the meantime, Jing Hao walked along the street, listening to music, and at the same moment he was followed from the tree. Suddenly, the main character stopped, because he felt something strange, and the observer tightened and hid behind a tree. Then the young man carefully looked out from behind the tree and wondered what kind of affairs and where Jing Hao went. The stern hero was behind the observer, and pressing him to the tree, asked who sent him to him. The frightened guy said that he did not think anything bad and begged not to kill him. And Jing Hao asked, "No one sent him." Jing Hao released a young man and asked why he was following him, and he replied that he was earned at a banquet of the Tao family and asked the students to take him to him. The boy fell to his knees and began to beg the protagonist to teach him to be strong, because he had never met people like him. The hero immediately answered negatively, and the young man, barely restraining his tears, said that he could prove to him that his time was standing. He asked him to give him the opportunity to show his abilities, which was a little interested in Jing Hao, who turned around. With the help of his ability, the main character created a shield and asked the boy to break it to show his abilities. The young man exclaimed that it was easy to do this, but having hit the subject, he gritted his teeth tightly and cried with incredible pain. Jing Hao said that this shield reflects the blow in tenfold, and if he is afraid more, he can safely fail from here. The gloomy boy said that he was afraid of pain, but even more he hates his own weakness, which sounded very firmly. Then he once again waved his fist and exclaimed that he wanted to become the same as the main character in order to be able to defend himself. The hero asked not to pronounce loud words because the willpower is much more important. And the young man asked to see and promised that he would prove everything to him. At first he struck his fist, after which he had a foot. But in both places the bones were broken and the guy fell to his knees. Jing Hao asked if this was all, and the boy said that there may not be more opportunities, so you can't give up. On top of his voice, the guy exclaimed that he would do everything so that his forces and would not stop at anyone, because the goal is much higher than that. With the help of his head, he destroyed the shield, which stunned the protagonist, whose eyes opened widely with surprise. Jing Hao held a tired boy in his arms and said that he coped, recalling Mu Fen, and the young man thanked the teacher. Meanwhile, two unconscious men who stood in the way were thrown out of one of the high-story buildings. As it turned out, it was the work of Tao Hunze, who was waiting for a showdown after previously happening situations at the institution. Shi Yangan, who called him a good servant and asked him to call the owner, threatening that he would kill him. The tense Tao Hunze realized the hopelessness of the situation, immediately called Jing Hao, because he had no other way out. The hero picked up the phone, and Shi Yangan asked him to come to the Hotel Heavenly Wave if he was not afraid until all his people were interrupted. Jing Hao menacingly asked him to think about how he wanted to die while waiting for his visit. The hero himself began to demonstrate the most basic techniques that will help him in battle to the newly made student. He showed first-class equipment, a series of blows which was called the blows of the abyss, and added that the young man is hardy and she suits him. The boy with great respect leaned to the ground in front of the teacher, thanks to him for the equipment shown. Jing Hao said that he has 3 months to master it, and as he finishes, he should find him. But if he does not cope, he can forget that he is his teacher. Meanwhile, the leader of one of the families sat in his office and expected the arrival of the protagonist, suffering from boredom. Qi Zhenchuan said with a mockery that Tao Hunze clearly did not think that this day would come when he dared to go against him. Shi Xianbin was bored, and he offered to have fun, after which he paid attention to the hostages from the Tao family. He said that the bodyguard reached the level of a great warrior, so it will be interesting to put them two against him. But with the ability, it will be different. Then Shi Yanbin said that if they win, he would let them go. But if he loses, he will lose his life. But at one point, Shi Yangan and Qi Zhenchuan were very surprised to pay attention to Tao Hunze, who was no longer afraid of anyone. He asked to leave him people, and added that if the head wants to have fun, he could consider him as a companion. Xu Xinbin also flew up from his chair and exclaimed gambling that since their leader had not appeared, he would take up their upbringing. At that very moment, the gold energy technique was used, which would allow the man to have fun properly. Following her, a stone wall was used, which forced Tao Hunze's eyes wide open from tension. Xu Yanbin, meanwhile, continued to advance, conditionally clamping at the vice of the young man and calling all this very simple. Tao Hunze was not a timid dozen, and shouted that he could not even think that he could cope with his block. But this caused only laughter. The enemy exclaimed enthusiastically that he was not some kind of newcomer there, because he has the highest level of the great warrior. At the same moment, Hunze lay on the floor and breathed heavily, and Shi Yanbin called him funny and asked how he was even thinking of dealing with him. But unexpectedly, the arrogant man tensed, feeling something strange, and then the ability of Jing Hao aligned him alive. The protagonist intervened and, calling Xinbin, he said with a removal that Tao Hunze was about to finish him down and he should have kept his mouth behind his teeth. The young man, meanwhile, was kneeling and asked the master forgiveness for the weakness that he showed in battle. Jing Hao gave him a flame that it would help him, and he would become equal in strength with the enemy. After which he asked Hunze to deal with their enemies. All the wounds on the body of Tao Hunze immediately healed and confident, and then he began to promise the master that everything would be done. The main character with a sharp movement raised his hand up and used the flame to slow down the action of the opponents. The shocked Xin Yangan asked the question that he really burned his abilities. And what is it for black magic? He tightly gritted his teeth with anger and exclaimed that Jing Hao would not be able to fool him, because there was no fear at all. Tao Hunze asked the enemy not to dare to scream at his master, after which he threatened that they would show him where his place was. The embittered Shi Yanbin sternly said that if he wins, then he and his master will surrender and leave the city. The young man wanted to pounce on him, but Jing Hao stopped him and said that this was not a question, but if he loses, he would break his hand and hit him. The arrogant guy laughed and asked the hero, "Does he really think that the weakness of Tao Hunze is suitable for his rivals?" Tao Hunze brutalized after the words he had heard and used the ability, realizing that he could not lose, because the master believes in him. Xu Yangan did not fall asleep. He also did not hesitate and used the fiery with respect for the capacity, swinging his fist on the enemy. He understood that Jing Hao would not have defeated, but Tao Hunze was without question, and was glad that now they would finally disappear from the city. Xu Xinbin was eager to deal with the enemy as soon as possible and end all this, after which he tried to strike. The arrogant guy understood that the enemy was doomed to failure, but suddenly his fist was intercepted before the strike. Tao Hunze grinned into his opponent's eyes and asked, "Is that all that he was capable of?" after he loudly declared his abilities. The shocked Xin Yangan began to stutter with surprise and asked how it happened to him, and then drew attention to the fact that the ability was weakened. The young man waved his fist and asked, could he have so simply blurred in front of his respected master who believed in him? After these words, the blow was struck in the face of Xu Yangan, who was then thrown to the hazardous movement. Qi Zhenchuan was very excited and could not believe that Tao Hunse defeated his powerful master. Tao Hunse respectfully began on the right knee in front of Jing Hao, saying with confidence that he had fulfilled his assignment. Xu Xianbin lay with his head broken and silently looked at the protagonist, who stood in front of him and smiled. Jing Hao said that since he already had one hand, it remains only to hit, after which he would not stay alive. The wounded, powerless young man understood that the main character would hit him with all his strength, but he could no longer resist. The blow was inflicted, and his strength was so high that Xu Yangan was like a football ball thrown out the window. Then Jing Hao drew attention to the frightened Qi Zhenchuan and his ally who stood behind. They recognized unlawful and began to beg for mercy on his knees, and the hero told Tao Hunse that he knew what to do with them. In the end, the hero said that these three for a week should leave the heavenly wave and asked him to do it. The excited Tao Hunse said that they are as influential as his family, so he cannot do this. Jing Hao turned around and said that he would direct people to his aid, and after all, their property will go to his family. The young man leaned in front of the master with great respect, and the hero realized that the Tao family in any case will have more power. Meanwhile, at the entrance of one of the mansions lay guards who did not show signs of life. And inside, there was a crowd of people. One of the men told the girl that their guards are already without strength. They would have to know their place, and then asked her to call the chief of CU. Then the gray-haired man took the frightened girl by the face and said that if she does not, he would cease to be so kind. The excited girl ran to Mr. Zai, screaming at all his voice that they had big problems. The main gentleman told the rest that Sha, his student, like Liu Jian, ordered to find out who killed them, because he must take revenge. Then the head Lenion drew attention to the noise and said that someone was going on. Then he had an unkind foreboding. A black car stopped in front of the building, from which Jing Hao got out, which asked what they gathered here and barked like dogs. The mustachioed head lion called him an impudent and said that he should be known that they were a secret emptiness from the group, and asked the guy to leave. Jing Hao was not at all afraid of his statement and, smiling, said that only they would leave here, that it sounded provocative. The man did not endure such humiliation and rushed with a battle at a daring young man, using a fiery palm. Surprised associates exclaimed that the head of Liang would not leave a chance, so the boy is definitely not to do. The judicious Jing Hao remained completely calm and analyzed the enemy's actions, saying that he was moving too slowly. Then, right on the run in the jaw of the head of the Lan, a powerful blow was delivered with a fist, which immediately beat him. Everyone around was shocked and wondered how the guy happened like that. With just one blow to push the chapter, the head Lenion remained conscious and asked the boy what it was and who he was at all, after which he asked him to be called. Jing Hao grinned and said that he was the one who killed Liu Jian and Sha, and the one whom the man was looking for all this time. The man began to raise his associates, and he said that if the hero killed them, then he has no other choice besides revenge. The head lion was not going to give up at all and used a fiery seal, which was a very significant and serious technique. His associates watched with trepidation, saying that the mentor would fight at full strength because he decided to use his trump card now. Jing Hao was interfering with their meaningless chatter because he could not concentrate and asked everyone to silent. The head of Lenion realized that the protagonist was a great warrior, and it became clear to him where all this arrogance originates from. The arrogant young man used a magic pedal and said that he was not interested in listening to the empty tales of a man. His behavior was angry with the chapter, and he asked him not to be so confident, after which he used the fiery seal again. Excited associates with trepidation watched the duel of the two great soldiers and said that it was obvious that the head would win. The head of Liang confidently stated that such an arrogant young man was definitely not equal to him, but for his students he avenged. But at one point, he and his classmates drew attention to the bloody pedal in the air and trembled out of fear. The dark flame worked perfectly, and after a few seconds loud cries were heard from incredible pain. Jing Hao exhaled tiredly and said that in the group the secret emptiness is only weak, after which he began to go away. Suddenly, the excited Q Mukon came running, who asked what he was doing here and said that she had heard that someone had arranged a membrane. In response, the young man only laughed and said that nothing serious happened and everything had already improved. Sumukan said that he was again in trouble, and then added that she would meet the graduates tonight. The girl wanted to add something else, but they suddenly called the hero, and he said that he needed to answer and asked her to be silent. King called him and who asked if the secret emptiness group caused anxiety, and the hero replied that he had already dealt with them. He said that behind everything is Dwan Yuntao, who told everyone that Jing Hao dealt with the head of the secret Emptiness, and now he has jewelry. The hero said that he would look forward to a meeting with him, and Qing said that Su Mukan will have a meeting of graduates tonight. The young man asked the girl what she wanted to say, and Q asked if he would have a company to meet her tonight. Jing Hao without a second thought, and exclaimed very confidently that she would make her company without question, which the girl was delighted. The cheeks are cute girls blushed from pleasant sensations, and she said that in this case, she would go to change clothes. The hero understood that it was necessary to pick up something more frightened in order to hit all those present, because the meeting would be at the level. Dwan Yuntao, meanwhile, told his associates that all the great warriors of the city of Tianlan had already been interested and were monitoring Jing Hao. He grinned insidiously, in his thoughts, saying that the dragon began to be carried out and could not wait for a great warrior. The guy confidently said that a rare book of training methods or another rare value will become his, and only him. Graduates gathered in the institution, who discussed that the meeting was organized by a very beautiful headman who spent a lot. A red sports car suddenly stopped in front of the restaurant, which immediately attracted the attention of everyone around. A charming headman, Du Yui, who conquered everyone with her stunning appearance, got out of a luxurious car. 3 men standing in front of the entrance of the establishment expired with saliva, looking at a charming girl who was in excellent shape. Behind Du Yusi walked a fair-haired young man in a blue suit, who introduced himself as her boyfriend, Liang Zhenhao. The young man was admired by the girls, but upset men who realized that the headman would not even look at them. Liang Zhenhao looked around and was a little alert, wondering why they were not here yet. He decided to ask Du Yui, was her classmate Sumukan not here yet, and she replied that it would probably be soon. The young man asked the girl to tell the truth if she understands what he would do today if she does not warn Sumukan. Du Yuya was a little confused by her cheeks blushed, and at the same time she could not formulate a sentence for an answer. At the same moment, another car stopped before the institution, which was less luxurious and not so attractive. 3 men wondered whose battered car, which from the side looked like a simple collapse. The beautiful Q Mukan suddenly got out of the car, who greeted with a polite smile and asked for forgiveness for being late. The same 3 men were stunned by her beauty, and Liang Zhenhao, looking at the girl, also admitted that she was beautiful. Sumukan took Jing Hao's hand and said that all her classmates were already assembled, and it's time to go inside. Liang Zhenhao, quietly but insidiously looked at the protagonist and thought in his thoughts that today is the day of his death. He quietly used fiery ability and said that the path was long, after which he asked them to go inside and arrange. The guy believed that everything would work out and he would kill the hero in one fell swoop, and then he would take his father's jewel. Liang Zhenhao decided not to waste time and rushed to attack Jing Hao, using a fiery palm to reproduce him. The cold-blooded hero exhaled tiredly and said that he was already familiar with this technique, while he did not even blink his eye. At that very moment, a powerful blow was struck in the jaw of a self-confident youth whom he called the same garbage. Everyone around did not expect to see this, and Liang Zhenhao fell near the front door, trying to recover after the blow. The protagonist, by clicking his finger, took advantage of the magical sword, saying that now his turn to act. The sharp sword at the same second entered the insidious Liang Zhenhao, who was shocked and did not manage to react to the attack. Liang Zhenhao, panting heavily, said that he would never forgive Jing Hao for daring to repel his blow. An excited Du Yui immediately ran up to him and asked if he was in order, and the guy replied that he needed to find the master. But suddenly, he drew attention to the fact that his body in the area of the lower back began to envelop black magic. Jing Hao inflicted another blow and said that it was very unfortunate that he would not be able to deal with him because he wanted it so much. The hero said that this was not all and asked the rest whether to escort them, and Sumukan began to worry. The entrance door of the institution was suddenly locked loudly, which made up the girls nervous even more. Zhang Zhen and Jing Qi from the Black Crow, who said that if Hao gives them a jewel, they would not cause evil. 3 classmates of Cu Mukan were surprised to observe what was happening, because all the legends gathered in the same room. Jing Hao pointed his finger up and said that there is another stronger than them, which also needs to be paid attention to. The man went downstairs and said that he was surprised that the hero had discovered him, and asked if he would give them what they were asking for. Zhang Zhen said that the energy of rage was very strong and the body was numb, and Jing Qi tensed because he could not even move. The main character again used the magic plant told her that he really does not like it when someone was watching him. One of the men turned to Mr. Jing Hao and asked him to leave his worthless attempts to resist, But at the same moment, he had to answer for his words and he screamed in pain because the hero used his ability. Jingche and Jiang Zhen were stunned by the fact that in a second, the man was destroyed and could not even resist this. Jing Hao looked at them severely and asked if they still think that he needed to enlist the security guarantee. Then he took the Su Mukan by the hand and offered to return home. And the girl immediately agreed and did not argue. Jingche and Jiang Zhen did not understand who this guy was but they were sure that they could win. While in the car, the excited crew Mukan asked the hero if everything would be in order, because these people will still come for him. Jing Hao in response smiled at the girl and asked her not to worry, saying that he would take her home and he would still call on business. The alarmed Siyu Mukan asked the young man to be careful because she did not want something to happen to him, and he promised to protect himself. Then he began to go forward, in his thoughts saying that he was tired of all this and wondering when they would calm down. The protagonist grinned and said that soon all these midges will fall into his network, since they would run into it. King said that in Tianlin everyone was already informed about the hero's message, and many great warriors would come to fight him. Jing Hao asked the man whether the country house would fit under the burial place of the great warriors, in his opinion, and he replied that it was quite soon. The main character got out of the car and asked everyone to get out, saying that without killing him, they would not receive Jewel. After these words, several great warriors jumped out on him, who were aggressively tuned and longed to kill him. But the young man was not the first to join the opponents, and he could deal with the whole crowd by clicking his fingers. After a few seconds, each of the attackers was defeated by a sharp blade that released Jing Hao. None of them could understand how he managed to deal with everyone so quickly, because they were all very strong. Jing Hao said that these four were not an obstacle, and expressed the hope that real wars were about to seem. There were people on the street who discussed that someone would be the first to overcome the protagonist, and he would get his jewelry. At one point, the glass was knocked out that I signaled that a large-scale battle was about to begin. Going inside, the great warriors saw Jing Hao in the chair, who drank wine and said that he was tired while he was waiting for them. All of them immediately rushed to the protagonist, saying that they would simply tear him to shreds, and jewelry will belong to them. The main character only laughed and called it all naive, after which he used a dark flame, forcing opponents to scream from pain and suffer. He was not at all afraid of the great warriors who tried to confront him, and straightened his finger with each of them. Jing Hao, in a stern tone, asked the opponents to remember the nickname of the one who killed them, introducing themselves as a silent killer. People nearby drew attention to the building shrouded in dark magic and immediately began to run away to it. One of the mercenaries read out the summary that in one night Jing Hao defeated all the great warriors who came for the jewel. The tense Jing Qi, meanwhile, also read the news in the newspaper and was shocked that there was not even bones left from the soldiers. It was written in the newspapers that they called this man a silent killer who interrupted 500 great warriors in one night, staining his name. Dwan Yuntao, sitting at the headquarters of the military detachment, rejoiced that his plan was successful, and the fame of Jing Hao diverges quickly like fire. He smirked insidiously and said that now it remains only to save the inhabitants of the city and become a hero, which was an excellent opportunity to become famous. The guy closed his eyes and focused on his thoughts, analyzing the situation and imagining what awaits him after gaining glory. Tuan Yuntao recalled the beauty of the Qi Mukan, who is always with Jing Hao, and who could pay attention to him. At that very moment, mercenaries gathered in the office, which he called to distribute orders and introduce them to the course of business. The mercenaries of the Dragon and Hawk carefully listened to the order and realized that the chapter decided to declare war on the monster Jing Hao. It was decided to just talk at first and then move on to the implementation of the second part of the chapter plan. Meanwhile, Tsu Mukan was at home and called Jing Hao, saying that the food was ready to sit down at the table. Soon they sat down at the table and the girl asked the young man to eat more, because recently he had eaten poorly, and he thanked her. On the phone of the protagonist, suddenly there was a call from Xu Jingqi, to which he immediately answered and asked what was the matter. The guy said that his plan was a success and everyone knows the nickname, and Dwan Yuntao now does not find a place for himself and wants to declare a war on the hero. Jing Hao said that Yuntao was glad that he had a trap, but obviously does not expect that he himself was really trapped. The protagonist said that since Dwan Yuntao himself is looking for perdition, then he will help him with pleasure in this. Then he drew attention to the two standing men near his house and asked who they were and what they needed here. One of the men with a smile said that they were from the Dawn group and asked the silent killer to go with them. A member of the group told the hero that the jewel is with him, and his group has views, so they need to discuss this. Jing Hao was in no hurry to go out and asked what would happen if he refuses to give the jewel of the group. The members of the group unanimously said that in this case they hoped that he calmly tolerates the pain that they would cause him. The heart of the alarmed Siyu Mukun began to fight more often, and she asked the protagonist what was the matter and suggested returning to meals. The young man smiled at the girl and said that he had noticed two very entertaining insects on the street, which were cracking incessantly. The members of the group were angry due to the fact that the insolent called them insects and were ready to join the battle. One of the men asked the ally to quarter to the guy, but to leave alive, since they still need to learn about the location of the jewel. Jing Hao was not at all afraid and said that they themselves asked, after which he called on the arrow of black magic by clicking his finger. The members of the Dwan group immediately fell into the clutches of black magic and had a single chance to resist her. Surprised Siyu Mukun got up from the table and asked the protagonist what is so entertaining in insects. The young man with a smile replied that he had already driven them and offered to go to eat, because it was impossible for her work to disappear in vain. The beautiful cheeks turned red and she called the hero very polite, and what she became very awkward. Then she showed the invitation tickets, said that he was sent to Xinyao. Then, as 2 days later her father had a birthday, Sumukun asked Jing Hao if he would go with her, and he agreed enthusiastically. The hero hoped that Jinu is not interested in jewelry, otherwise Kumukun to lose his friend's support. The leader of the group, the secret Emptiness, said that in a letter to Dwan Yuntao, it was written that the head Lenion was not able to get the jewel and was killed. Mr. Tan said that the head went to avenge his student, but as a result, his student suffered. The leader said that since he knows how things are, he would deal with a silent killer and ordered him to take his jewel. This was not at all a problem for Mr. Tan, and he saluted the elder, saying that he was doing everything as he said. Meanwhile, people were already gathered in the house of the family of Jinyao, and her father asked the guest to get treated and not to deny himself anything. The man asked her daughter what she was doing here. She asked him not to pay attention and said that she wanted to meet a special guest. One of the men wondered who this is such an important guest that even the daughter of the head of the family personally meet him. Soon, a car stopped in front of the house from which Zimukan and Jing Hao got out, which greatly delighted Xi Jinyao, who was waiting for them. Tsumukan laughed a little and thanked the girl for going out to meet them, but the hero simply thanked. The man from the crowd asked who they were, and a standing friend said that the head of the CU is very beautiful, but unfortunately, she has a boyfriend. Shinu with a smile asked the guest to pass, and the female voice suddenly exclaimed that she called the one who wounded the people of her brother. It was the younger sister of Chan Qing, Chan Huan, who poked a finger at Jing Hao and said that he had no conscience. The daughter of the hero of the occasion exclaimed that here, the territory of the SE family, not Chan, asked not to arrange a quarrel and leave. The girl's cousin, in a calm tone, asked Shi Jinyao whether her guests really offend his lover. The nervous girl immediately exclaimed that his lover began the first, and no one had offended her before. Jing Hao stood behind and carefully watched a small conflict, trying not to intervene. Father heard the booth and asked what was the matter, and then said that today was his birthday and asked not to quarrel. The man behind asked not to wrap himself in this family if they want to start a quarrel on his older brother's birthday. The excited Chan Huan suddenly took Xinyan's hand and said that everything was against her and she needed help. She asked to help cope with Jing Hao, promising that tonight she would allow him to do everything that he wishes. That it sounded tempting. The Qingyan was honored by the head of the family and said that it was Jing Hao Chan Huan who offered Jing Hao and asked to deal with him. The man did not make hasty conclusions and first asked the protagonist whether this young man tells the truth. The hero answered absolutely calmly that his answer to the opinion of the head of the family would not affect, and he would better hide in the room, otherwise they will kill him. The guy from the crowd exclaimed that Jing Hao was crazy since he was saying such a family head at his own birthday. The younger brother of the chapter was wary and in his thoughts asked the question, did this guy notice something and began to suspect? At that moment, a sniper nearby really looked at the back of the head of the family through the sight, preparing to take a shot. The killer did not think for a long time, so as not to miss the opportunity, and at that very moment a loud shot from the window nearby fired. The head of the family looked at the bullet flying into him and was nervous, realizing that he would not have time to evade, and he was waiting to an end. But he was shocked when he saw Jing Hao, who grabbed a bullet with his fingers and said that he would return it to the sender right now. With a click of a finger, the bullet was directed towards the sender and flew at an incredibly high speed. During the flight, it was shrouded in dark magic, which endowed it with even greater force and added the coefficient to speed. The sniper, observing the sight, was nervous. wondering how this is generally possible. But the death did not force him to wait long, and after a moment the bullet went through, having lost the killer of life. Tu Jinu was very happy and admired that Jing Hao acted as a real hero and saved her father. The head of the family, with respect, turned to the young man and said that he was very grateful to him. Jing Hao said that the one who ordered his murder is standing next to him, which alerted and surprised the man. Awareness began to come to him, and he realized that next to him was his younger brother, who was nervous and looked down with shame. The hero said that the family of Sia should deal with their problems, and they will no longer linger here. Sinu thanked him for the salvation of his father, but at the same time she was a little upset by their departure, although she realized that this was a matter of principle. The young man asked her not to thank her and said that he did this only because she was a friend of Tsumukan. A delighted girl in her thoughts said that it would be very good if such a strong man drew attention to her. The excited Kumukan said Jing Hao that it was very dangerous and she could not choose more words. The young man said that the dangers were just beginning, and he came here to check if her friend was hiding something. The girl asked with great surprise, "Did the dangers really just begin?" which sounded menacing. At the same time, they drew attention to the arrow flying in their direction, but Jing Hao did not scare the next danger at all. With a deft movement, he caught an arrow and asked the arrows of the arrow to leave immediately while they were still intact. The mercenaries laughed and asked for a silent murder to give jewelry, promising that they would not touch him. The harsh Jing Hao was not going to ceremony and said that since they did not want to leave, then they would die right here and now, after which he sent the arrow. One of the mercenaries was immediately wounded by an arrow that hit the chest cage, forcing him to cough with blood. Two other warriors were very excited about what they saw and began to worry about Jianhui, who was their comrade. Jing Hao severely said that there was no need to scream, then how he was already dead and said that if they want to live, they should get out. The hero added that they are clearly not alone here, but the mercenaries unanimously asked what he was talking about. Then, the head of the group, the secret Emptiness, who said that he would deal with him, and next to him were Yanjun and Menhei, who were warriors. The mercenaries were very nervous, wondering where so many members of the group came from. Jing Hao looked at everyone with a serious gaze and asked whether it was true that Dwan Yuntao sent all of them here. But the head said that the hero killed the elder of his group, and now he would pay for it in his own life. The excited Q Mukan told the young man that there were a lot of them and wanted to offer him to retreat in order to stay alive. But he firmly took her hand and said that he would deal with them and asked to wait a bit. And the head looked into his eyes. Jing Hao asked Sumukan to return home and promised to come immediately after her, because while she was here, he could not fight at full strength. The girl was very worried and asked him to be careful, and the main character did not talk much and simply nodded his head. Looking at the leaving car, in his thoughts he said that she should return and have a good rest, and tomorrow the battle will be over. At the same second, from all sides, mercenaries attacked him, who longed to get his life and jewel. Jing Hao again used the plant of dark magic and wet that all of them were clearly tired of living, since they were so risk. Tsumukan was driving home and realized that even though the young man told her that because of her could not fight at full strength, but still worried about him, at one point, she braked sharply and leaving the car said that she had to return immediately because she did not want to lose it. But unexpectedly, in her way, a man stood up, who greeted the girl, calling her the president of the biotechnology company. Tsumukan was immediately worried, because it quickly dawned on her that she was standing in front of her Dwan Yuntao, who had obviously unkind intentions. He reached out to her with his hand and said that she would become his trump card, and asked not to be afraid for Jing Hao, promising that they could not do anything to him. Dwan Yuntao said that he himself to deal with his people if they would do something to him, after which he grabbed the defenseless Tsumukan. Jing Hao, meanwhile, dealt with all the attackers and said that now you can return home. A sheet of paper flew in the face, on which it was written that Mukan was at Untao, and the hero must lose in battle so that nothing happened to her. The main character immediately faded and said that the bastard Dwan Yuntao is worse than the insignificance, but he would definitely deal with him. Soon the day of the battle came, where Dwan Yuntao told all the audience that he would kill a silent killer today, and they will be witnesses. Some people were surprised that he could walk on the water, because the ability of a great warrior allowed him to do this. Su Juya and Dwan Jihui discussed that after the last conference of the Golden Scale, the power of Dwan Yuntao increased significantly. Neither Hai said that the time had come to appear that guy named a silent killer, and at the same time he was confident in the victory of the captain. Dwan Jihui said they were fighting to death, so perhaps they will be able to make a profit. The chairman of the collection of prominent people said that even if the silent killer defeats Dwan Yuntao, his life will belong to him. The secretive killer said that this time she came to personally meet with a silent killer, because she wanted it for so long. Dwan Yuntao loudly exclaimed that he knew that the silent killer was here and asked him to leave immediately. Jing Hao began to go to the water, and people did not know that he was a silent killer, and discouraged him from this, warning that he would die. The main character got into the water and said that he is those who are calling for the battle of Dwan Yuntao, which surprised others. After a few seconds, he was behind the enemy and said that he had come, and Dwan Yuntao did not expect him to do it so quickly. Lin Zhuyan was shocked, learning that Jing Hao was the same silent killer who brought a lot of noise. Dwan Yuntao said that he was waiting for him and worked so much for this day, but today the silent killer will die from his hand. Jing Hao was most worried about the question, where is Siyu Mukun now? Because she was very dear to him. The enemy said that if he loses to him, the girl will be intact and sound. But otherwise, everything will be different. The hero offered to exchange his life for the life of Mukun, saying that he saw how Yuntao tried to step on him to get to the top. Others looked at him with bewilderment and did not understand what he was talking about at all. And the outcome of the conversation was unpredictable. The furious Dwan Yuntao asked him not to speak nonsense and loudly stated that he would deal with him right now. People were excited because he used a wave of ki, which was a stronger attack, and in the city there are almost no people capable of it. Then a blow was struck right into the head of the protagonist, who at the same time stood still and did not even take a step back. The self-confident Dwan Yuntao said that his movement could even kill the early stage of the spiritual kingdom in a few seconds. Jing Hao, in a calm tone, asked him not to try to use his strongest technique to die stylishly. People were shocked that he remained unharmed and did not even move after such a powerful blow. Suddenly, on the phone of the protagonist, a call rang out, which forced people to worry even more, because if he was distracted, he would die. Everyone was surprised that he answered, after which it became clear that he was showing off and not too high an opinion about the enemy. Dwan Yuntao was beside himself with rage and said loudly that he wanted the death of Jing Hao right now and would do everything for this. The enemy again used a powerful blow, but the protagonist continuously continued to talk on the phone. The shocked Duan Jihui and Su Juya discussed that Dwan Yuntao had already become the great master of the kingdom of the spirit. Jing Hao on the phone asked Wu Jianya to take care of Mukun's sister, saying that he was going to kill someone. Then the phone call was completed, after which the main character looked at the enemy with a serious look and waved his hand. People were shocked by the fact that he repelled the enemy's attack with one hand and began to admit that Dwan Yuntao was much better. Dwan Yuntao, frozen in place from shock, could not believe what was happening because his blow was the strongest, but Jing Hao beat him. The protagonist used his abilities, said that Su Mukun was found by his people so Dwan Yuntao may die. With the help of his ability, he released bloody blades towards the enemy while being cold-blooded. The excited Dwan Yuntao understood that he would die because he could not block this movement. So the end is inevitable. People shouted with trepidation to run away, but the blades flew at a great speed and squeezed the guy's back. Jing Hao directed the blades at the opponent's feet to save him from the possibility of running away at high speed. Then the main character gave the blades the order to attack the enemy's chest in order to completely immobilize him and deal. Bloody blades flew into the chest of Dwan Yuntao at the same second, forcing him to scream from pain and cough with blood. In the end, Jing Hao ordered the blades to fly to the enemy's head in order to finally end him to solve his life. But unexpectedly, an unknown man appeared behind the guy who was like an angel and who stood on his defense. He said that Dwan Yuntao could not die because he was useful, after which the man said goodbye to the silent killer. Jing Hao wondered why not take advantage of the fact that here all the high-ranking faces of the city, and most of them want to kill him. The killers unanimously exclaimed that they would immediately deal with a silent killer who had put a lot of noise. A whole crowd of people attacked the protagonist, who, as before, remained cold-blooded and was not afraid. Jing Hao called opponents ants and said that they did not know their dignity at all, after which he used dark magic against them. The hero said that today in the city of Tianlan, there is no one who could threaten the safety of Siyu Mukun. But at one point, Jing Hao drew attention to the female voice behind, which he said something about what was happening. Mo Xinjuan said that the death of Siyu Mufeng was not so simple, and asked a silent killer if she wanted to cooperate with her.